Hello and welcome to GB News at ARC Conference. I'm Darren Grimes and I'm joined by the fabulous Emma Webb and none other than the host of the Rubin Report, a wonderfully successful YouTube channel, Dave Rubin. Thank you very much.
I would have liked fabulous.
Fabulous?
Yeah.
No, well, you're fabulous
None
too,
other than
Dave.
Dave Rubin. All right, I guess. But fabulous, magical, wonderful, majestic. You guys have so many words.
We do actually.
All of our words came from you.
Quite the lexicon. Quite the lexicon. Dave, I want to talk to you first of all about what you've seen since you arrived in Britain. Online, we've seen videos of men being thrown away, dragged off by the police from their wives with stage 4 terminal cancer, simply for, well, they're calling it a hate crime. And the hate crime here in this instance appears to be, reportedly, a case of criticising the flying of Palestinian flags on British soil in favour of, it has to be said, the actions of Hamas, which is a terrorist organisation. Are you pretty despondent about what you've witnessed in Britain since arriving here?
Well, I would say what I'm seeing in this room that we are in right now has been unbelievably inspiring, and hopefully we'll talk about that in a moment. But despondent is the right word in terms of what I've seen in London as a whole. As I was going to dinner last night, I drove past what I would call a Hamas rally. I don't think it is a Palestine rally. I think there's historical reasons that word doesn't even make sense in that context. But you don't see anyone at these rallies that is saying, no, I'm against Hamas, I'm against the actions of Hamas, I'm for the people of Gaza. If someone did do that at those rallies, they would not be treated particularly well. So this gentleman that you're talking about, who is a British citizen, he was just frustrated that there were Palestine, again, what I would say are Hamas flags, and he was expressing some discomfort for that. I know that you guys don't have the protections that we have around free speech and our First Amendment, which is constantly under assault, only secondarily to our Second Amendment, which is protecting our First Amendment, is the jealousy of the world. I'm fairly certain when I talk to sane people here in the UK, which I'm looking at 2 of them right now, that you guys think, boy, if our founding documents had only enshrined these God-given rights more tacitly, so that they wouldn't be able to come after people for expressing displeasure with a flag of, in essence, a terrorist organization, or so that you'd be able to defend yourself more so when a mob walks by your house. So I guess despondent is probably the right word, but I would also say that if there's a silver lining, and I don't know that we're at the silver lining yet, but if there is some silver lining about what's happening right now, is that the attacks in Israel on October 7th were so barbaric, they were so medieval, that truly words, as I'm sure you guys have probably said too on air, words do not describe what has happened here. It has so resonated across the West, it has so exposed the lunacy of intersectionality on the left, and it has woken up a certain set of people that were happy to be in a slumber. And if we can keep waking those people up, then maybe we don't go off the cliff. I think the United States is a little more secure in that because of our immigration has not been as affected by.
Although the southern border is pretty serious, isn't it?
Right, we have our own problem. I mean, literally this morning I was watching a video of thousands of people coming. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they're from. They're not all Mexicans. Not that would be okay either. We simply do not know who they are. You may have seen a video a couple of weeks ago of RFK, who at one time was a Democrat, now he's an independent. He went to the border with a selfie video, and he basically just started asking people, where are you from? They're all coming from the Mexican border. I think 28 countries worth of people just walked by him, and then they just wander into our country.
What do you think explains this sort of acquiescence? It's a deeply cultural problem, isn't it? Something that is shared across the Atlantic.
Yeah, well, it's bizarre because you would think that America, which is obviously very different than Western Europe, and you guys have all sorts of shifts in population and demographics, and borders are not what they should be here. I think that's fair to say. America really only has 2 borders. We've got Canada and Mexico. Now, we're pretty much not that worried about Canada. I think a lot of Canadians would like to come to America in light of how their government treated them, especially during COVID. But we have, in essence, imported the same policies that simply have not worked here, right? I mean, I don't think there's any average Brit out there at a pub right now that's going, boy, these immigration policies have really worked. No. Even putting aside, if you put aside some of the racial tension and you put aside, the basic ideas of what this country has stood for are being ripped apart when you have mobs of people on the street calling for genocide. And that is what they are doing. Let's not make a mistake about it. When they chant from the river to the sea, everyone knows what's from the river to the sea. And as I've said on my show many times over the last few weeks, if you don't care about the Jews per se, or if you're not Jewish, or you don't care about Israel per se, I think there's many reasons why you should, and you should understand history and everything else. But let's just say you don't care about any of that. Why should the average Brit care about what's happening? Because if you think that when they are done with the Jews, if they do the unthinkable and have Holocaust 2, which, by the way, October 7th was the largest day of Jewish deaths since the Holocaust, if you think they're going to, oh, we're good to go, guys, we accomplished it. Do you think the people that are here in London right now, only, about 2 miles away from us was the rally that I saw? Do you think they're going to just wash their hands and be left of it? So I don't know the exact answer to your question, which is it negligence that allows our leaders to let these people in? Is it willful idiocy? Is it bizarro guilt? I mean, I think it's a litany of things. Or is it what some would say is the cynical version, but I don't think it is, which is a desire to destroy the West? We have a death wish, and we better get rid of that wish.
Well, indeed. I mean, Dave, you're a big supporter of Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
You have been very vocal about your support for him. I'm wondering, it strikes me as an observer that there's a split within the Republican Party, within that debate right now, where there are certain factions that say the Nikki Haley's of the world, we need to be robust on the global stage, and actually America needs to be, I guess, a de facto world policeman, and actually say, in the instance of Ukraine, we must absolutely support their fight, and even in Israel, we must be absolutely determined. Whereas Vivek Ramaswamy is perhaps a little bit less, a little bit more reluctant.
Yeah.
And I guess, Dave, and you will know this better than I do, that actually the American public are also pretty iffy about getting involved in conflicts around the world.
Yeah.
What would your message be to those who say, America, we've had our day doing this sort of thing, time to actually put America first?
I can make both arguments pretty soundly, and that's why I don't think you're necessarily a bad person if you think one thing or another. Is it possible that just as your empire became too large at one time, that our empire has become too large while we have neglected our own problems at home? Well, that is certainly possible, right? We're watching our border collapse. We're watching drugs on our streets. Our education system is off. All of those problems, it is possible to chew gum and walk at the same time, but sometimes juggling so many things at once is not possible. I can also make the counter argument, which is that if the United States is not the leader of the world, somebody will be. And we probably, for better or worse, are the best and perhaps the last great hope to keep Western civilization somewhat, let's say, in line, right? What I would say related to the more isolationist people now is I certainly, I've been very, very critical about the war in Ukraine, and I'm much more in the Rand Paul libertarian camp. When it comes to just handing them cash, we don't know where any of it's going. Rand Paul literally had a Senate hearing saying, can we just get receipts? That's all he wanted. We're going to hand you cash. You do your taxes at the end of the year. Your accountant's looking at receipts. We have no idea what's going on there, what we are funding, all of those things. So I've been very critical of that. It's also very unclear to me what our strategic interest is there, and that Putin, at the end of the day, who is not a good guy, and you are not allowed to invade foreign countries and all of those things, and borders exist for a reason, he does have nukes. So at the end of the day, if we are going to fund a war that we are not declared to be in, you still do have to say, well, okay, we might push this guy to do the unthinkable. I would say that's in stark contrast with Israel, which, first off, I'm completely against sending troops or anything like that. What I think Israel needs from America, from Britain, is not boots on the ground or anything. They need diplomatic support because they are the tip of the spear in the fight for Western ideals. As I said, it will end up here. And you've had suicide bombings here. You've had London, the tube bombings and things of that nature. They need diplomatic support, and they will need weapons because they're in a civilizational battle. I am not for nation building. I don't know what we're supposed to do at the end of the day with the population in Gaza. Gaza, there never was a nation of Palestine. Gaza was part of Egypt before 1967. Perhaps Gaza is supposed to be sort of a demilitarized zone now, and the people can go back and live in Sinai, which is part of Egypt. That might make some sense. But it's a much bigger conversation about what America's role is, sort of in the meta sense of everything. And I think, it's important to just reiterate it. You can be a good person and be on both sides of these things. And I think, let's put it this way: if America was if we had cleaned our room a little bit better, as Jordan Peterson, who put this together, might say, if our room was a little bit in order right now, I might be a little more hawkish in general. But, if your room's a mess, you may not, it may not be the best idea to yell at your sister about what's going on in the living room. And I think that's kind of where we're at the moment.
One of the threads running through this conference is about how to create a shared story. So obviously in the States, you already sort of have a shared story because the nation is founded in certain values. You have a written constitution, whereas European countries are quite different, particularly in the UK. What do you think of sort of how hopeful are you about this conscious attempt to try and reweave a shared national story as a solution to a lot of these problems we've just been discussing?
I like that you asked me how hopeful I am rather than how depressed I am, because that seems to be the general theme. I mean, people are depressed. And by the way, you should be depressed right now. We are at what I suspect it probably felt like on the world stage a little bit before World War II, where so many people know something's wrong. So many people are afraid of saying anything, and the more that you don't say anything, the more that you turn the heat up in the pot, and you're the frog, and you're turning. Your silence is actually what is giving the gas to the flame, in essence. I would say I'll give you the hopeful version in a Jordan Peterson-esque way, which is that the fact that this man put together this conference as an extension of his decades of work that was rooted in fix your life. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. You have intrinsic value as an individual. That is what this country that we're in right now, your country, is based on, actually. It's certainly what America, in the most fundamental way, is based on. Western civilization is based on the idea that you have value. You have rights that are God-given rights. The government did not give you your rights. The government can protect those rights, hopefully, and it can often infringe on those rights. But I'm hopeful because we are... Again, the events of the last few weeks were so unimaginably evil that the average person who is in that slumber is seeing something. Now, we still have to drag them. And we will have all of the bad influences that you guys have in your mainstream media here and in your political class here. And I'm no fan of your mayor of London or a whole bunch of your other politicians, but we've got the same people. But I believe if we're brave, we can win this thing. I mean, that's the beauty of humanity, is that we go through horrible times, right? It's just how it is. Humans are horrible to each other. The default position of humanity not constantly killing itself is a real aberration. The last, say, post-World War II world is very bizarre. 75 years or 80 years of relative peace. Obviously, there was Vietnam, there were some other things. But relative peace on the globe is pretty good. We don't want to just shred all that and go back to the other way. And the inclination, it's much easier to do that. So we have a lot of work to do, but why not, right?
What do you think about the intersectionality of all of these things, where you've got gays for Palestine and you've got, they might as well be saying gays for Hamas. Well, look, I say to them, Dave, I will pay for your one-way ticket to Gaza so that you can fly your pride flag, and we'll see how you get on.
Gays for Palestine is very different than Palestine for gays. That's one part of it. I would say on another sort of silver lining of all this, there are less tall buildings in Gaza now, so there's less places to throw the gays off roofs. That's nice. No, it's extraordinary. It's so psychotic that it's almost like how could we possibly be talking about this? How could a group of thought of liberal, they're not really liberal, obviously, but leftists in America, blue-haired leftists who have no gender, and they have, they like to chop their genitals off. They do. And it's the other people who want to chop their heads off. So there's something about chopping that makes sense with these people. Or Greta Thunberg. How did we get a class of people, of young people, and I think there's many reasons for this. It's algorithmically charged. It's post-COVID charged, social media, which made us more antisocial, and how you can infect people with all of the wrong ideas. And so much of the gender and trans stuff particularly is a social contagion, not a genuine psychological issue, but that's a different topic altogether. But if you would have said to any of us 15 years ago, there are literally going to be people breaking into Israel to shoot Holocaust survivors in cold blood and murder children, and then on college campuses in America, 3 days later, there will be genderqueer, whatever you want to call them, cheering it on. Even someone like me, who's been a little bit ahead of this, would think this is completely insane, and yet it's also very obvious. They have whittled the world down into oppressed and oppressor. And once you do that, you will do almost anything to defeat the oppressor. You will, there is nothing too barbaric, actually, which is a lot of the messaging that we've seen. And that's why, again, I would say, if anyone wants to prove to me that these pro-Palestine rallies are not pro-Hamas rallies, then get out there with signs. Have some signs that say, I completely condemn Hamas, you cannot kill civilians, blah, 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 but I'm here to support the people, and it will not go well for them either. So.
A number of people have pointed out that cognitive dissonance has been very telling. I think it was Douglas Murray who said that sometimes a flare goes up and suddenly you can see where everyone stands.
You know, Douglas Murray, I just had him on my show a few minutes ago. Douglas obviously wrote A Strange Death of Europe, 7 or so years ago, which clearly has become prescient relative to where we're at right now. But another line, and I recommend you guys use this too, and I always credit Douglas for it, so I'll credit him again, that he has said is that one day the barbarians will be at the gates and we will be debating what gender pronouns to call them. And that's basically where we are right now, instead of really addressing what the issue is. So a very serious British government, what would they be doing right now if you had a serious government? You would be looking into deporting people. You would be looking at what do we do about people who hold dual citizenship or whatever else. How are we going to deal with speech if you are going to quite literally call for genocide, or if you're just going to march in front of a store that happens to be owned by a Jew? Those people have rights too, and those are law-abiding British citizens. So if Britain was a serious country, and by the way, I don't mean that with disrespect while being here, because America is not either to a large extent. You asked me about DeSantis a few minutes ago. I mean, I think Florida is a serious state in a very unserious country. But these are the questions that we should be asking and trying to figure out answers to.
Do you think actually the despondency that you speak of, and especially with younger people getting caught up in these movements, in these new, whether it be sex and gender, whether it be pro-Palestinian stances, a whole host of things. On your YouTube channel, you've had many conversations in the past about faith. Do you actually think that God-shaped hole in people's lives, they're looking to fill it with something? And right now they're filling it with horrible Marxist indoctrination that is frankly poisoning the West.
People believe in something whether they believe that or not. That's what I would say. The need to believe is so innate to humans. It's so fundamentally what drives you. Wake up in the morning, you believe something about the nature of the universe, right? You just do. There is some reason that you woke up this morning and you knew you had somewhere to go and what you were doing, and that you believe, as I suspect you both do, that by doing something like you're doing right now, you can hopefully affect change in a positive way. That's probably not empirically true, right? Douglas Murray has spent an incredible career warning about these things, but these things are still here. But he believes that by exposing them and waking up people, maybe you can turn the tide. I believe that by doing what I do, you can hopefully wake up enough people to understand what freedom is all about and to live a life that is congruent with all of the best ideas of all time. So belief, you need belief one way or another. There's been a real theme with that over the last couple days, because, I've talked to some very well-known atheists who are here, and interestingly, even the atheists are saying for their secular society to work, you need some grounding in it doesn't mean everyone has to be religious per se, but you need some grounding in something eternal. And that, by the way, is also why Israel seems to be at the spearhead of this thing. If you can disconnect the Jewish people from the land of Israel, Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus was a Jew. Nazareth is in the West Bank, which really is known as Judea and Samaria, Judea, where the Jews live. The story of Hanukkah, you don't have to be a believer in the miracles of the Bible, but the story of Hanukkah that has been told for thousands of years is the story of the Maccabees, the Jews living in the Judean hills, again, now known as the West Bank, where our Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib doesn't want any Jews to live. But it's the story of the Jews defending the West Bank, again, which we shouldn't call the West Bank, from the Greek invaders. So do you think these people have been here? The Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem is built on top of the ancient Jewish temple. You don't have to be an engineer to know which one might have come first. So if you disconnect all of the belief stuff, you start disconnecting actual history as well. And that's why all of our institutions are completely insane. People thought that, this woke stuff was only going to infect social science and it was going to affect, philosophy or whatever. And it has infected history departments. It has infected 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4 anymore. It's infecting science. We don't know if boys or girls. This is a big issue.
Well, it is. And to just summarize, Dave, on that big issue, we're speaking here about we've imported people who frankly hate our nation, hate our values, and would quite frankly like to perhaps even do off with many of us. Gays, whatever else it may else be.
I don't even think we have to make this about gays, or Jews,
Christians,
or even minorities.
it could be anyone.
It's right, because that's the part people really need to understand. It's anyone who lives outside of that very narrow worldview. It's the average Brit. It's the average Brit.
So it's that narrow view that is encompassing large swathes now of the population. The young people feel utterly indoctrinated by this stuff. What is your message, Dave, for people watching this who say, look, I agree with everything Dave Rubin ever has said on his wonderful YouTube stream.
They exist. Yeah.
What do you say to them? But they say, look, I'm just so utterly sick. I'm depressed. I'm worried about my children. I'm worried about my nation. Do I go live somewhere else? The United States isn't even free and open and tolerant to my views and conservative values anymore. What the hell do I do, Dave? We're all looking to Rubin. Help us.
Well, then I'll look to the other guy that's here, Jordan, which is is that you have a responsibility to stand up for what you believe in your life. It is the only answer to any of this. There is no magical politician that is going to come and save you. We could bring back Winston Churchill, and yes, he would do some political things, obviously, now that your leaders don't seem able to do. But he would only appear if the people made him appear. And the people will only make him appear if they decide to get their life in order. If you think for 1 second that by being quiet right now, you will escape this thing, if you think by burying your head in the sand, all it means is that they're going to behead you a little lower on the neck. That's what it means. And until people really understand that, freedom is not the default position of humanity, as we talked about earlier. Barbarity is, sectarian warfare is. You guys have something. Our tradition in America is so born out of what Britain was all about,
yeah.
and then these rebels left and built something with maybe a little more rebellious spirit. So maybe you guys need to look to America and go, boy, maybe that rebellious spirit, which is maybe that's not fully embedded in you guys to an extent the way it is in America. But as goes Israel, goes Britain, as goes Britain, goes America, as goes America, goes the rest of the whole damn thing. So unless you want to find an island somewhere in the South Pacific that nobody else lives on and you're going to arm it to the teeth because they'll come there too, you better defend what's yours while you can.
Indeed.
One final question, just in a few words. How hopeful are you that we can turn this around?
We will turn it around. We will turn it around, and the only question is how many people will we lose before we do that? What will be our threshold before we decide to be adults? And I suspect it will be higher than most of us would want. The civilizational sort of rot that we will have to see before that, but maybe not. And that's the challenge for all of us.
Dave Rubin, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure, guys.